The moment I stepped onto the Poseidon's Dream, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. It wasn't the forced smiles of the crew or the whispers that died when passengers approached. No, it was the pit in my stomach, a primal warning I stupidly ignored. Now, as I cling to a tilting rail, watching the eerily calm eye of Hurricane Ezra surround us, I realized the truth. This isn't just a freak storm or a tragic accident. Someone wanted this ship to sink, and I've stumbled into a nightmare far deadlier than any force of nature. The real question is, will I live long enough to expose it? The Poseidon's Dream loomed before me, a floating city of steel and glass that promised 7 days of pure bliss. As I wheeled my suitcase up the gangway, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. This cruise was my chance to reset after a messy divorce and years of coding in a cubicle. The grand atrium took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and a cascading waterfall that seemed to defy physics. But as I approached the check-in desk, I noticed the receptionist's smile falter for a split second. Her eyes darted to a burly security guard nearby before she plastered on her grin again. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Reeves," she chirped, handing me my key card. "Enjoy your stay on the Poseidon's Dream." As I made my way to my cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Crew members huddled in corners, their conversations dying as soon as passengers walked by. In the elevator, I overheard a heated exchange between two officers. "Can't keep this up much longer," one hissed. "We don't have a choice," the other replied, his voice tight with stress. "If word gets out." They clammed up as soon as they noticed me, offering tight-lipped smiles before hurrying off at the next floor. My unease grew as I unpacked in my cabin. The TV blared a cheery welcome message, but a scrolling alert at the bottom caught my eye. Tropical storm Ezra forms in the Atlantic, cruisers advised to monitor. At the mandatory safety briefing, Captain Harriet Blackwood's confident demeanor seemed at odds with the nervous energy of her crew. As she explained evacuation procedures, I noticed Chief Officer Larson whispering urgently in her ear. The captain's face paled for a moment before she regained her composure. "Nothing to worry about, folks," she assured us with a forced laugh. "Just a bit of weather to navigate. The Poseidon's Dream can handle anything Mother Nature throws our way." But as we set sail that evening, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. I stood at the rail, watching lightning flicker in the distance, when a voice beside me made me jump. "Beautiful, isn't it? Nature's raw power." I turned to see a woman in her late 30s, her eyes fixed on the approaching storm. She introduced herself as Dr. Amelia Chen, a marine biologist along for the ride. "That storm's moving fast," I commented, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. Dr. Chen's brow furrowed. "Too fast. And the ship's heading straight for it." As if on cue, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, urging passengers to return to their cabins due to unexpected inclement weather. But as Dr. Chen and I exchanged glances, we both knew this was more than a simple squall. Little did we know, our real nightmare was just beginning. The ship lurched violently, sending me sprawling across my cabin floor. Hurricane Ezra had intensified faster than anyone could have predicted, and the Poseidon's Dream was caught in its fury. Alarms blared as I stumbled into the corridor, joining a stream of panicked passengers. "This way!" a crew member shouted, ushering us towards the ship's center. But as we rounded a corner, I spotted Chief Officer Larson blocking access to a restricted area. His face was ashen, and he was shouting into a radio. "We can't hold it much longer." "The whole breaches," he cut off abruptly when he saw us, snapping the radio off and plastering on a forced smile. "Nothing to worry about, folks. Just a precautionary measure." But I knew better. The ship was taking on water. I found Dr. Chen in the crowded lounge, her face grim. "Something's not right," she whispered. I overheard the engineers. "They're saying the damage is too severe for just storm impact." A horrifying thought struck me. "You don't think sabotage?" Before she could answer, the ship gave another violent shudder. The lights flickered, then died, plunging us into darkness. Screams erupted around us. When emergency lighting kicked in, I saw fear etched on every face. But there was something else in the eyes of the crew, guilt. Dr. Chen and I made a decision. We had to find out what was really going on. Using her keycard, we snuck into the restricted areas. What we found chilled me to the bone. Deliberately damaged equipment, logs of suspicious transfers, and a half-burned document outlining an insurance scam of epic proportions. The Poseidon's dream was meant to have an accident, but not like this. Hurricane Ezra had turned a greedy scheme into a fight for survival. As we raced to warn the others, the ship gave an almighty groan. We entered the hurricane's eye, a false calm in the midst of chaos. Through the windows, I could see the wall of the storm surrounding us, waiting to strike again. We needed to act fast. Dr. Chen and I burst onto the bridge, evidence in hand, ready to confront Captain Blackwood. But the scene that greeted us was beyond anything we imagined. The captain was in handcuffs, and a man I'd never seen before was barking orders. He spun towards us, flashing a badge. Special Agent Marcus Thorne, FBI. You're in the middle of a sting operation gone horribly wrong. He explained rapidly. They'd been investigating the cruise line for months. The accident was supposed to be controlled, but Hurricane Ezra had blindsided everyone. Suddenly, alarms shrieked. The owl was upon us. As we scrambled to initiate evacuation protocols, a massive wave struck. Water exploded through the windows. In the chaos, I saw Chief Officer Larson fighting his way to a private lifeboat. Wait! I shouted, but it was too late. He'd sealed the door, leaving us all to die. The ship groaned, tilting sharply. We were running out of time. I don't know how long we've been adrift in this lifeboat. Hours? Days? The hurricane's eye has become our prison, calm waters mocking us as the wall of the storm looms on all sides. I managed to help a handful of passengers escape, but what about the others? Dr. Chen, Agent Thorne, Captain Blackwood, did they make it out? In the distance, I think I hear the thrum of helicopter blades, but it could be my imagination. As our meager supplies dwindle, I wonder, will rescue come in time? Or will Ezra claim us all, burying the truth of the Poseidon's dream forever in its depths? I never thought I'd be grateful for my fear of heights. But as I cling to a shattered window frame on the 100th floor, the supercell raging outside, I realize it might just save my life. The building's swaying like a ship in a storm, and I can hear metal screaming under the strain. It's just me, Lark, and Zoe up here now. We thought we were so clever, staying late to impress the boss. Now, as another desk flies past me into the abyss, I wonder if we'll live to regret it. Something's moving in the shadows behind us, and I'm terrified it's not just my imagination. God, I hope it's just my imagination. My name's Everett, and at 42, I've climbed the corporate ladder faster than most. But right now, as I peer through the rain, last windows of Apex Industries headquarters, I'm starting to think the view from the top isn't worth it. The day had started like any other. I'd arrived before sunrise, determined to finish the quarterly report. Lark, our 35-year-old head of accounting, was already there, her desk a sea of spreadsheets. Zoe, our bright, 22-year-old intern, bounced in around 9, armed with a tray of coffees and a weather warning we both ignored. It's just a storm, I'd said, waving off Zoe's concerns. This building's designed to withstand hurricanes. How I wish I could eat those words now. The storm hit like a freight train around noon. 1 minute, the sky was a moody gray. The next, it was pitch black, split only by veins of lightning. The wind picked up, howling around the building's corners like a banshee. We didn't worry at first. Storms were common, and our top-floor offices usually gave us a spectacular show. But as the hours ticked by and the storm intensified, unease began to creep in. Maybe we should head down, Lark suggested, her usual confidence wavering. Before we could decide, the lights flickered once, twice, and then plunged us into darkness. Emergency lights sputtered to life, bathing the office in an eerie red glow. Okay, now we're definitely leaving, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We made our way to the elevators, but the buttons remained dark when pressed. Of course, no power, no elevators. The stairs, Zoe said, pointing to the emergency exit. But when we pushed against the door, it didn't budge. We threw our weight against it, but but it was like pushing against a brick wall. It must be the pressure difference, Lark explained, her voice tight with panic. The storm's creating a vacuum. Trapped. The word hung unspoken between us. A crash from the other side of the floor made us jump. What was that? Zoe whispered, clutching my arm. Probably just something fell over, I said, not believing it myself. Let's find a flashlight or something. We need to be able to see. As we fumbled through desk drawers, a sound reached my ears that made my blood run cold. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the darkened corridor beyond. We weren't alone up here after all. Did you hear that? I whispered, my heart pounding. Lark and Zoe nodded, eyes wide with fear. We huddled together, straining our ears. The footsteps had stopped, but the silence was almost worse. The storm raged outside, rattling the windows and making the building creak and groan. We need to find a way out, Lark said, her voice trembling. Or at least somewhere safer than this open space. I nodded, trying to think through the panic. The supply closet. It's sturdy and has emergency kits. We inched our way across the floor, jumping at every shadow. The red emergency lights cast an eerie glow, turning familiar office furniture into looming monsters. Suddenly, a window exploded inward, showering us with glass. The wind howled through the opening, whipping papers around us in a frenzy. We scrambled to block the hole with a heavy filing cabinet, our hands shaking. Look! Zoe shouted over the wind, pointing at the sky. Through the broken window, we could see the supercell in all its terrifying glory. The clouds rotated slowly, an angry vortex that seemed to be staring right at us. We finally reached the supply closet, slamming the door behind us. Inside, we found flashlights and a first aid kit. As I flicked on a light, Lark let out a choked sob. I can't breathe, she gasped, clawing at her throat. She was having a panic attack. I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. Lark, focus on my voice. Breathe with me. As we calmed Lark down, a loud crash echoed from outside the closet. We froze, hardly daring to breathe. We can't stay here, Zoe whispered. We're sitting ducks. She was right. We had to move, had to find a way out. But as we stepped back into the office, our flashlight beams revealed a scene of chaos. Desks were overturned, papers scattered everywhere. And there, leading away from the broken window, was a trail of wet footprints. Someone else is here, I said, my mouth dry. We followed the trail, our fear battling with desperate hope for rescue. It led us towards the far side of the floor, where the executive offices were located. As we rounded the corner, our flashlights illuminated a horrifying scene that would stay with me forever. The floor, to ceiling windows of the CEO's office had completely given way, leaving a gaping maw in the building's side. Rain lashed in horizontally, and the wind's roar was deafening. Office furniture tumbled towards the opening, sucked out into the storm's maw. And there, clinging desperately to a desk teetering on the edge, was a man I'd never seen before. He wore a maintenance uniform, his eyes wide with terror. In that moment, I realized he must have been hiding from us, perhaps trapped here before we arrived. We rushed forward, but the building gave another violent shudder. The desk slid further, and I had to make a split-second decision, risk all our lives to save this stranger, or watch him plummet to certain death. Time seemed to slow as I reached out my hand, the stranger's fingers just brushing mine as the desk tipped into oblivion. The storm's finally passing, and rescue teams are on their way up. We're alive, but forever changed. The maintenance worker's fate haunts me. Did he survive the fall? Could we have done more? As I watch the sun break through the clouds, I can't shake the feeling that this nightmare isn't truly over. In the face of nature's fury, I've glimpsed how fragile our sense of security really is. Will I ever feel safe again? And what about the footprints we found? Were they his, or was someone else up here with us? Some questions, I fear, may never be answered. The crackle of the walkie-talkie jolted me awake. Zara, we need you at the main lodge. Now. Ethan's voice was tight, controlled, but I caught the undercurrent of panic. Outside my cabin window, the pre-dawn sky flickered with silent lightning, casting eerie shadows across the campground. As I fumbled for my shoes, a gust of wind carried a sound that made my skin crawl, a child's laughter, hollow and wrong. I hesitated, hand on the doorknob. In that moment, I knew something at Camp Pinewood had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. And somehow, I was at the center of it all. The day had started like any other at Camp Pinewood. As a first-time counselor, Zara Mitchell, was still getting used to the rhythm of camp life. The air hung heavy with humidity, making my shirt cling uncomfortably to my skin as I herded my group of pre-teens towards the mess hall for breakfast. "Zara, did you hear about the storm warning?" Mia, my fellow junior counselor, jogged up beside me. Her ponytail swung with each step, betraying her nervous energy. I shook my head, glancing at the clear blue sky. "Storm? Looks pretty calm to me." Ethan, our head counselor, overheard us as he passed by. "Don't worry about it," he said, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Mia's jitters. "Director Carlson says it'll probably miss us. We're going ahead with the campfire tonight." As the day progressed, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The air grew thicker, and an eerie stillness settled over the camp. Even the usually rambunctious kids seemed subdued. By late afternoon, angry clouds had gathered on the horizon, their dark underbellies promising more than just a light shower. I found myself in Director Carlson's office, along with Ethan and Mia, voicing our concerns about the impending storm. "It's just a little bad weather," Director Carlson dismissed us with a wave of his hand. His withered face, usually set in a stern expression, now looked almost annoyed. "We've dealt with storms before. The campfire goes on as planned." As we filed out of his office, Ethan pulled us aside. "Look," he whispered, "I don't like this either, but we need to stay calm for the kids. Let's just get through the campfire, and hopefully, the storm will blow over." Mia and I nodded, but the knot in my stomach only tightened. As we walked towards the campfire site, I noticed something odd on the corner of the mess hall building, a faded marking that looked almost like a tally. I blinked, and for a second, I could have sworn I saw more tallies appearing, but when I looked again, there was nothing there. The campfire began as the first rumbles of thunder echoed in the distance. I tried to focus on the kids' excited faces as they roasted marshmallows, but my eyes kept darting to the tree line, where shadows seemed to dance a little too vividly in the flickering firelight. That's when the first lightning bolt struck, illuminating the entire camp in a brief, harsh glare. And in that split second, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In that flash of lightning, I caught a glimpse of a figure darting between the trees. My heart raced as I squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Was it just a camper out of bounds? Or something more sinister? Before I could voice my concerns, the sky opened up. Rain poured down in sheets, instantly dousing our campfire and sending kids into a panic. "Everyone to the mess hall!" Ethan shouted over the din of rain and frightened voices. Chaos ensued as we herded the children across the muddy ground. The wind howled, whipping branches into our faces. I gripped the hands of two younger girls, practically dragging them through the storm. As we burst through the mess hall doors, a deafening crack of thunder shook the building. The lights flickered once, twice, and then plunged us into darkness. Screams erupted from the children. "It's okay, it's okay," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Everyone stay calm. "Ethan, where are the emergency lights?" No response. "Ethan?" I called again, a note of panic creeping into my voice. Suddenly, a beam of light cut through the darkness. Mia had found a flashlight. As she swept it around the room, I did a quick head count. My blood ran cold as I realized we were missing 3 campers and Ethan. Director Carlson pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of barely contained anger. "Where are the others?" he demanded. I don't know," I stammered. "They must have gotten separated in the storm." "We need to find them," Mia said, her voice shaking. Director Carlson's eyes narrowed. "No one leaves this building," he ordered. "I'll go look for them myself." As he turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something that made my skin crawl, a small, fresh cut on the back of his neck, right where I'd seen that strange tally mark earlier. Against my better judgment, I waited until he was gone and then turned to Mia. "We can't just sit here," I whispered. "We need to find those kids and Ethan." Mia nodded, her face pale but determined. We slipped out of the mess hall into the raging storm, the wind carrying what sounded like whispers, or were they screams, from the dark woods beyond. As we stumbled through the underbrush, our flashlight beams cutting through the rain, we came across an old, half-hidden trail. It led us to the mouth of a cave, where we heard muffled voices coming from inside. Heart-pounding, we entered the cave. Our flashlights revealed Ethan and the missing campers huddled together, looking terrified. But it was what was behind them that made my blood run cold. The cave walls were covered with tally marks and desperate scribblings, some looking decades old. "Help us," one read. "The storm never ends," said another. As we processed this chilling scene, we heard footsteps approaching. We ducked behind a rock formation, and to our horror, we saw Director Carlson enter the cave, talking on a phone. "It's done," he said, his voice echoing. "Another tragic accident to keep the legend alive. The camp's reputation as a cursed site will draw on even more thrill-seekers next season." In that moment, we realized the storm wasn't our enemy. It was merely a cover for something far more sinister, a deliberate plan orchestrated by the very person we trusted to keep us safe. The storm cleared by morning, leaving behind a changed Camp Pinewood. The official story? A group of campers got lost and were heroically found. But I knew the truth. As I watched the kids excitedly chatter about their adventure, I caught Director Carlson's eye. His gaze was cold, calculating. I fingered the scrap of old newspaper in my pocket, evidence of past accidents at the camp. The weight of the truth pressed down on me. Should I speak out? Would anyone believe me? Or would I become just another tally mark? Summer had only just begun, and the forecast called for more storms. The air in the control tower crackled with an eerie static as I peered into the swirling darkness outside. My last shift before retirement was supposed to be routine, but Mother Nature had other plans. The radar screen pulsed with an angry red mass, a supercell storm unlike any I'd seen in my 40 years guiding planes. Suddenly, an unidentified blip appeared, heading straight into the tempest's maw. As I reached for the radio, a bone, rattling thunder shook the tower, and every light went out. In that moment of pitch black silence, a chilling whisper came through my headset. "They're here, Frank. And only you can stop them." I shook my head, trying to clear the ringing in my ears from the lightning strike. The voice on the phone had gone silent, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. I scanned the room, expecting to see Sarah Chen, our night shift meteorologist, but her workstation was empty. Had she stepped out just before the strike? "Sarah?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty tower. No response. I turned back to my console, my eyes drawn to the mysterious blip on the radar. It was still there, moving erratically through the heart of the storm. Years of experience told me that no pilot in their right mind would fly into a supercell like this. Something wasn't right. I reached for the radio, switching to the emergency frequency. "Unidentified aircraft, this is Thunderbolt Tower. You are heading into severe weather. Please respond immediately." Static crackled through the speakers, punctuated by what sounded like muffled voices. I strained to make out words, but they remained frustratingly unclear. The main phone line lit up. Relief washed over me as I answered, expecting to hear Sarah's voice explaining her absence. Instead, I was greeted by Captain Ethan Reeves, pilot of Flight 237, scheduled to land in 30 minutes. "Tower, this is Flight 237. We're picking up some unusual weather patterns on our radar. Can you advise?" Ethan's usually calm voice had an edge to it. I glanced at the meteorological displays. The supercell was intensifying at an alarming rate, its structure unlike anything I'd seen before. "Flight 237, I'm tracking a severe supercell in your path. Recommend immediate diversion to..." My words were cut short as the radar screen flickered, showing multiple new aircraft suddenly appearing around Flight 237. "Impossible. They couldn't have just materialized out of thin air. Tower, we're seeing. I don't know how to describe this, Ethan's voice crackled through, panic evident. There are lights surrounding us. They're not aircraft. They're moving impossibly fast. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing and hearing. The mysterious blip I'd noticed earlier was now moving towards Flight 237 at an incredible speed. As I opened my mouth to respond, the tower door burst open. I spun around, expecting to see Sarah. Instead, I found myself face to face with a woman in a dark suit, her FBI badge glinting in the emergency lights. "Frank Holloway?" she asked, her intense gaze locked on me. "I'm Agent Lydia Frost. We have a situation, and I need your help." Agent Frost's presence only added to the growing tension in the tower. She quickly briefed me on a potential terrorist threat involving hijacked drones disguised as aircraft. My mind raced, connecting the dots between her intel and the strange radar signatures. "We believe they're using the storm as cover," Frost explained, her eyes darting to the radar screen. "But we need your expertise to track and identify the real threats." I nodded, turning back to my console. "Flight 237, maintain your current altitude. We're working on a solution." I tried to keep my voice steady, not wanting to alarm Ethan and his passengers further. The next hour was a blur of frantic communication, with Frost relaying information to her team while I juggled the safety of multiple aircraft and deciphered the chaotic radar signals. The supercell continued to grow, its angry red core expanding on the weather map. Sarah finally returned, looking shaken. "Frank, you won't believe what I just saw outside," she started, but I cut her off, quickly bringing her up to speed. As Sarah took her station, a new blip appeared on the radar, larger than the others and moving with purpose. "Frost, we've got a new player," I called out, pointing to the screen. Her face paled. "That's it. The main drone. It's carrying the payload." The implications hit me like a punch to the gut. Hundreds of lives were at stake, both in the air and on the ground, if that drone reached its target. I made a split-second decision. "Flight 237, I need you to change course. Head directly into the storm cell." "Tower, are you insane?" Ethan's voice crackled through, disbelief evident. "Trust me, Captain. It's your only chance." As Flight 237 banked towards the storm, the drone followed, just as I'd hoped. The turbulence would be brutal, but it was their best shot at shaking off their pursuer. Lightning flashed across the radar screen as Flight 237 entered the supercell's core. The drone was right on their tail. Suddenly, a massive burst of electricity lit up the tower, and every electronic device went haywire. In that moment of chaos, I saw it. The drone's signal vanished, replaced by a rapidly descending blip. "It's down!" I shouted. But my relief was short-lived. As the systems came back online, a chilling realization struck me. Flight 237's transponder was silent. I desperately called out on all frequencies, praying for a response. The radar cleared, revealing a single blip emerging from the storm. But it wasn't Flight 237. The drone had survived, and now it was on a direct course for the airport. I locked eyes with Frost, both of us knowing we had seconds to make an impossible decision. In the aftermath, I sat in the debriefing room, my hands still shaking. The official report would state that Flight 237 had gone down due to extreme weather conditions. The thwarted terror attack would remain classified. As I signed my retirement papers, I couldn't shake the memory of that final, garbled transmission from Ethan's plane just before it vanished. Months later, while watching the news, I froze. A report about a small plane discovered in a remote area flashed across the screen. For a split second, I swore I saw a familiar face among the survivors. But before I could be sure, the image was gone.
Like the story? Hit like and subscribe. See you in the next story popping up on your screen at this exact moment.